The MacBook Pro's Touch Bar in 2020, is it worth it? Does it actually increase productivity? Should you be basing your purchase around the Touch Bar? Well then, you're about to find out all of this in this video. Hi friends, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be looking at whether the Touch Bar is worth it, whether it's worth the money, and overall the main question, does it actually increase productivity? So in this video, I'm going to be talking about the negatives and the positives of the Touch Bar, as well as how it's useful for content creators and how it can be good and bad for daily use. So let's get started. So yes, I know what you might be thinking, that either the Touch Bar is utter rubbish, a complete waste of money, and that no laptop should ever have it, or that it's just okay and that it doesn't really add any value to the product. In some cases, yes, you're completely right in saying that. However, in some apps, the use of the Touch Bar has actually sped up my workflow. Okay, so yeah, enough of me telling you, why don't I show you the good and the bad? So if your workflow revolves around you having your MacBook plugged into a separate monitor, with a separate mouse and keyboard, we could both agree that you're not going to awkwardly reach across the table to where that laptop is plugged in to use the Touch Bar. That's just not going to happen. But there are going to be times when your laptop isn't going to be connected to an external monitor, mouse or keyboard, or that your workflow just doesn't revolve around it having to be connected. Well then, you'll get to experience the Touch Bar. But then the question is whether the Touch Bar will actually increase your productivity, whether it will actually speed up your work. Okay, so let's set the scene. You're browsing the web while listening to music. A song you really don't like comes on and you want to skip it without having to open up the music app. Well, your option is to use the Touch Bar. However, to get to the section of the Touch Bar where you can skip the song, you have to click twice. Once to open up the submenu, and then once again to actually skip the song. This is slower than if you had a dedicated key that you would have if you didn't have the Touch Bar. I feel like this is a personal preference in whether this would annoy you. Personally, I'm not that bothered by it. However, I can see this as being a bit of a problem, especially since other laptops can do this with one button click. This now brings me to my second point. I've seen a lot of people complaining on social media that when reaching for the backspace key, they've accidentally activated Siri by clicking on the Siri button. Personally, I've never actually experienced this. However, if this is you and you have accidentally activated Siri, or if you're getting a new MacBook and you think you've activated Siri, don't let this deter you from the Touch Bar, as you can easily learn to not reach so high with your pinky. But one of the main problems I've seen people mentioning, myself included, is the lack of physical function keys. So function keys can be really useful in certain applications and when doing certain things like programming and like using a terminal window, for example. But it can also be useful when like playing games, as some games require you to use a function key. But yes, I know what you're thinking, Macs aren't designed to be gaming machines, and yes, you're correct, they're not designed to be, but you can still play it, and the odd one or two games is actually really good and runs quite well on the Mac. But anyway, back to my point, the function key is required in these games, but due to a Touch Bar, there's no physical function keys. So how do you actually activate the function keys? Well, to do this, you have to hold down the FN button on the keyboard, and then this causes the Touch Bar to turn to show the whole function keys. This is alright, it's not the best way of doing it, as in I prefer to have the physical keys there for when I'm using certain applications. However, there is a workaround. In the settings under the keyboard section, you can enable the function keys to be shown for certain applications all the time. So you won't have to hold down the FN key in those certain applications. And so that is a workaround to that problem, but overall, physical function keys would be a lot better for when using those certain applications. Okay, so I've talked about how the Touch Bar can be annoying, but I haven't talked about the positive sides of the Touch Bar. So I'm going to assume that all of you know what Photoshop is. If you don't know what it is, Photoshop is essentially a program that allows you to manipulate photos. Within this program, this is where the Touch Bar comes in handy. Let's say you're touching up a photo with the brush tool. So what you could do is you can have your hand on the Touch Bar, controlling the properties of the brush, and your other hand on the trackpad or an external mouse, actually moving the brush and adjusting the photo. So this can be pretty useful as it allows you to adjust the properties of the brush with one hand using the touch bar, and then with the other hand you can control the mouse, which in turn controls the brush and therefore allows you to manipulate the photo. So adjusting the properties via the touch bar saves you a couple of seconds, and in the long run this adds up. So it's actually pretty useful to have the properties on the touch bar. As well as that, it's pretty cool to be able to adjust the properties of your brush from your keyboard. The touch bar in this case can be really useful. So it's not just Photoshop where the touch bar is really useful. It's also very useful in applications like Final Cut Pro and Adobe Premiere Pro. So for example, it can show like certain properties on the touch bar. But one of my favourite features that it can do is where it shows the timeline on the touch bar. So it will show you where exactly you are in the project, in the timeline. And this is personally one of my favourite features. It might not seem that useful, but once you actually start using it, you'll realise how good it actually is. But let's say you're not a content creator and that you don't use any of these apps. How does the touch bar affect you? Well then, in certain applications, the touch bar can help you quite a lot, especially in the core ones that come with macOS. So for example, like the Mail app and Safari, it provides useful information on the touch bar, but overall it isn't really that productive. It won't make your workflow a lot quicker. It's just there to provide extra information, so it generally wouldn't help to speed up your workflow. Overall, does the touch bar increase productivity? Well, then the answer to this depends on what you're using it for. If you're going to be using this for only daily tasks, then the touch bar isn't essential and won't really increase your productivity. However, if you know that you're going to be doing pro work like photo editing and video editing, then the touch bar can really help here. So is it worth the money? If you have spare money to afford the price range of the touch bar, then go for it. You definitely won't be disappointed. However, if you're going to be using a laptop for daily tasks like emailing and web browsing, then don't make the touch bar a thing that your decision revolves around. But I'm sure that we can all agree that the touch bar is generally a cool thing to have. A screen on your keyboard? Who wouldn't want that? But you can also play some pretty cool games on the touch bar, such as Pac-Man or Snake. I would be most interested on your opinions of the touch bar, whether you agree or disagree with me. Well, this now brings us to the end of this video. I do hope you have enjoyed it. If you have, please do consider giving it a like. And then while you're down there, please do consider subscribing. I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you.